videotape.
Oh.
Hell yeah, there is. In fact, I know somebody can definitely help you with that.
You do? Who?
Wait up, man. I heard Jamal from 90th Street. He watched that tape last week. And this morning he woke up dead.
How the hell do you wake up dead?
Because you're alive when you go to sleep.
Wait, just tell me you can
So you
help
telling me that you can go to bed dead and wake up alive?
You can't go to bed dead, man. That shit would be redundant.
Just tell me
No, it
who.
wouldn't. Because you can go to bed and not be dead, and you can die but not be in the bed.
But you are in the bed, man. That's how you wake up dead in the first place, fool.
Damn! That's some quantum shit right there, man.
What are you talking about?
You should be teaching classes. You stay dropping out.
Just tell me who can.
Let me just welcome you to Grace Life here in El Paso campus, and let me also welcome those of you joining us online all over the United States as well as around the world. Matter of fact, we got Jack and his wife with us today. They're from up in Colorado. I forgot what part of Colorado you were in. North. Yeah, north. What town? Fort Morgan. Okay, yeah, I knew that. Okay, thank you. Yeah, Fort Morgan. And they're going to be here till around May or so. They're kind of down here just kind of enjoying the warmer weather for the winter months. That's good. That's awesome. We're just glad that y'all are with us today. As I said a little while ago, we're beginning our brand new series called, this week, #1 of Waking Up Dead. And this actually is coming to you by special request from those of you who are kind of wondering about what might happen to us after we die, and what our loved ones are doing, and Hebrews talks about a cloud of witnesses and all different kind of things that we talk about, and we'll be covering some of that in this series. But today what we're going to kind of do is kind of look at the fact that whether you believe in life after death or whether you believe that we just simply cease to exist. I would venture to guess that most of us here today, if not all of us, believe that there is life after death in some form or another. And yet, we have a lot of people in our world today who choose to decide or choose to believe that we just cease to exist. But you know what? It seems to me that no matter which side of that line you fall on, everybody seems to have this interest about our loved ones who have gone on before us and those different kinds of things. There's still those questions that kind of nag in our minds about what about them, where are they at, what are they doing, do they see what we're doing down here, are they the guardian angels that are watching over us, all different kind of things that we kind of look at and think about when our loved ones pass over through the door of death. So let's begin today by just getting a little perspective on the death rate in our world today, those kind of things, the proportion of the various tragedies that we see, because we hear about tragedies around our world from time to time, right? Where hundreds or thousands of people are killed. Like over in France here, just in Paris, just 2 days ago now, they terrorists and stuff got a hold of a bunch of people over there and killed. I don't know what the final toll number was. Last I saw was 150 or 160, something like that. But we kind of need to get a perspective as far as those kinds of things that happen, because those are horrible things, are they not? I mean, to see that many people killed at one place in one particular time, we kind of need to get a perspective between that and what really happens in our world today as far as the average mortality rate is concerned of human beings here on this earth. So the fact is that every day, an average of 150,000 people die on Earth, on planet Earth every day. 150,000 people every day die on planet Earth. That comes out to about 2 people per second. Now we're talking about the entire Earth here. We're talking about all around the world. That's about 2 people per second. So, in other words, normal on planet Earth is where 150,000 people die every day, 2 people per second. And that's a lot of people. You know what? I mean, that gets to be an awful lot of dead bodies laying around. Now, that includes, what that comes out to is about 1 million people every week that die on planet Earth. That's a lot of people. You know what? 1 million people a week. Can you imagine? That's beyond me to imagine that. I don't know. So even when we talk about those tragedies that happen around our world today, where large numbers of people get wiped out in a single stroke, such as the recent earthquake in Nepal this past April, where 3,600 people died in that one particular tragedy. But that still only comes out to a little more than 2%, of one day's average mortality rate. That's a lot of people. It looks like a huge number when we see a large number of people that get killed at one particular time in one particular place, and yet when you look at it in the overall scheme of things, it's only just a little more than 2% of what happens every single day on this earth. Yeah, it happened all in one spot on that particular event, but it's still a very relatively small number comparatively. On the other hand, as horrible as that might seem to us right now, that's really not the worst of it. That's really not the worst of it. Because all of us know, whether we consciously think about it or not, that someday we personally will be in the casket instead of somebody else, right? I mean, it's a given. We don't like to think about it. We may not even like to talk about it. We may not even want to let it cross our minds, but it's there, you know. So how many, let me ask you this question. How many of you have an event penciled in on your to-do list, or maybe a block on your calendar somewhere that says, die? No? Well, why not? Obviously, none of us knows when that time will come, right? None of us do. None of us do. As a matter of fact, I hadn't thought about that till just this moment. This extra won't cost you nothing. But you know, when you talk about the ideas that, you know, we've got with the modern technology that we have and able to keep people alive for long periods of time, or at least to keep the body alive, those kind of things. And God says, yet He's the one who knows the day and the moment that we will die. And well, and our modern science likes to say, oh no, you don't. We do. Well, I beg to differ with you, because I think that God still has full control there, because I don't know when it is, and this is a whole different subject, but I don't know when it is that the spirit actually leaves the body. You know, the body can still remain. We can still suck wind, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we are still there. Like I said, that's extra, won't cost you nothing. Think on that, but don't let that block out everything else we're going to talk about today, okay? Sorry about that. Shoot, you know how, wow. So let me ask you this question. How comfortable do you feel about the fact that today could be your last day? How comfortable do you feel with that fact? Because all of us have to face that sooner or later, and you know, we just as well face that now than later, because we need to answer some real questions in our own mind about our own mortality, right? We've got to do that sooner or later. We just well do it sooner than later, as far as I'm concerned. Because the fact is, for about 150,000 people, that is going to be reality today. That's reality today for 150,000 people today. So, and you know, we just don't know. It could be, you know, I could be one of those. You never know. So the fact is, as far as our human bodies are concerned, death eventually catches up with all of us. It just does. None of us will escape that reality. None of us will escape that reality. I mean, even though our world today is in a frantic search for, you know, this the secret to living longer, you know, kind of like Ponce de Leon did way back looking for the fountain of youth. It hasn't changed any. Our scientific community is still searching for the answer, the secret to living longer. And I think what they're doing actually is working toward the possibility of living forever. What about the cloning and all those different kind of things that are happening today, you know, that we hear in the news, and they're actually doing that kind of stuff. You know, that we can, quote unquote, live forever in some form or another. That's really what they're shooting for. And that, you know, there's not a single person, however, on the other hand, there's not a single person in our modern world today who has ever managed to live longer than about 120 years old. Nobody has in our modern world today. Now, yeah, you can look back in the Old Testament, you can find out that Methuselah lived to be about 930 5, 6, whatever it was, you know, and some of those other folks lived to be almost that, you know, basically that old, 930, those kind of things. But, you know, as a matter of fact, just this past July, this year, 2015, Guinness officially recognized Susanna Jones as the oldest living person on planet Earth today. At 116 years old, this picture of her, 116 years old as of last July. And that means that Susanna lived through 20 U.S. presidents, 2 world wars, the birth of the automobile, the airplane, TV, putting a man on the moon, space travel, and the internet. Can you imagine? I can't. I can't. I was born 100 years too late anyway. And I just can't imagine seeing that much change in one lifetime. It just blows my mind. I like to talk to, of course I'm one of the older folks now, but I used to like to talk to some of the older folks about those times way back, when they were kids in the 10s or 20s and 30s, whatever, those kinds of things like that. It's interesting. I love hearing, the way they lived. And I'm glad, I'll have to say, I've seen on Facebook a time or two people say, I'm glad I grew up before technology, hit, when you still had to, go out and feed the chickens and, take care of all the livestock and those kind of things. I'm glad I grew up during that period of time, before technology hit and you just got a cell phone attached to your hip all the time and those kind of things, But you know what? Living to be 116 years old is still a really far cry from that forever target that science seems to be shooting for. That's a long ways off. We look at 116 years and say, wow, that's a long time. But, that ain't nothing. That ain't nothing. When you look at even at the 10 or 12,000 years of earthly history, that 116 years is a drop in the bucket, So then with that perspective in mind, I just kind of wanted to give you some of that stuff so we can get an idea of really where we're at as far as mortality rate and our own possible mortality, not knowing what time that will be or when. The question I really want for us to explore in this series is, what do we really know about what happens to us after we die? What do we really know about that, I mean, at the moment that we take our last breath on planet Earth, do we really know what happens next? And can we know what happens next? And does it really matter? It depends on your perspective, depends on how you look at it, whether it really matters or not. So if you're a born-again believer in Jesus Christ, if you believe in Jesus Christ as being who He says He is, then you'll probably say it definitely does matter what happens to you after you die, right? That if you have that perspective, you have that goal in mind, you have those kind of things, changes how you live, how you view death, how you view life. Because once you take your last breath on this earth, we would say, well, you just go directly to heaven or directly to be with the Lord. Well, that to me seems to be what Paul indicates in 2 Corinthians chapter 5 when he says, therefore, being always of good courage, and knowing that while we are at home in the body, we are absent from the Lord, for we walk by faith, not by sight. And we are of good courage, I say, and prefer rather to be absent from the body and to be at home with the Lord. Or, as I think another translation says, to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. Same basic thought, idea, whatever. So he seems to be indicating there that once we take our last breath on this earth, then we go to be immediately with the Lord. We go to be with God. On the other hand, it looks to me as though, and I think because of the other things that we read in the Bible, it seems that Paul may also be leaving a little room, or maybe a lot of room, for all of the other things that happen in the grand scheme of eternity. Because when you think about between the time when we actually die personally and the end of this world as we know it, there seems to be some other events that could possibly be happening in between there, So, some interesting stuff to talk about. Like the judgment of the living and the dead, that's yet to come in the future, which I think comes at some point after the rapture of the church, and which hasn't happened yet. I'm hoping it does before I have to go through the door of death. That would be nice. I think all of us would probably say that, or most of us probably say that. We would prefer not to have to just get sick and whatever it is that takes our life. It'd be nice if the Lord just come back and just, pop us out of here and we're good. That'd be awesome. But there's also a point in time after resurrection of the church, or after the rapture of the church, that we also at that point seem to receive our new remade perfect bodies too. So there's some other stuff there, and I don't think I really know the answers to those things, but we'll kind of save that for another time. Just wanted to kind of get you thinking on those kind of things. So before we get into some of the ideas about what happens to us after we die, let's begin by asking this question first. What can we say does not happen when we die? Anybody ever thought about it from that perspective? What can we say does not happen to us when we die? Well, many years ago I pastored a small church up in northern New Mexico in a place called Cuba, New Mexico. It's kind of surrounded by reservation. There's about 2 or 3 or 4 different reservations up in there. Of course, the Navajo reservation was the closest one nearby. And sometimes they would come and they would use the church there at Cuba for funerals. And I remember one time that the church building was being used by some local Indian people. And on one occasion, along with a lot of jewelry and other kind of things that they put in the casket with the deceased person, somebody also brought in a saddle and tried to stuff it. They were put it on and then tried to stuff it into the. Of course, it wasn't going to fit. We had to do something else. It just wasn't going to happen. But it's kind of like, some of us may think that maybe we can take stuff with us. I don't know. How many of you ever seen a hearse pulling a U-Haul? Yeah, I didn't think so. Yeah, it's one of those things that just doesn't quite fit, does it? I was thinking this morning that maybe I'm in the wrong business, though. I'm kind of in the life business. 150,000 people a day that die. Wow. But I just can't imagine sitting around waiting for somebody to die. Just doesn't seem to, I don't know. But funeral would seem to be the business to be in. There's just people dying. Never mind. Sandra Irene West. Maybe you've heard of her, maybe you haven't. She was a Beverly Hills socialite, the Texas oil heiress. And what she did is she required her brother-in-law, after her passing, she required her brother-in-law to have her buried in her 1964 powder blue Ferrari 350 America. Not only did she want to be buried in her Ferrari, but she also left specific instructions that she wanted, and this is not a Ferrari, obviously. Actually, we just simply couldn't find a picture. There's no pictures of that event. Weird, huh? You'd think that there'd be all kinds of pictures all over the place of some woman being buried in a Ferrari. Maybe, I don't know. But that wasn't the end of it. She also wanted to be buried in a lacy nightgown, and she wanted the seat where she was placed behind the wheel to be inclined at a comfortable position. I don't know if she thought she was going to drive that thing out of there one of these days or what, but I don't know. So the first thing that we know does not happen after you die is you can't take it with you. Pretty obvious, but I think it still needs to be said. You can't take it with you. Actually, Jesus told a parable one time about a man whose land had become so productive that he decided that he was going to do something about it. Here's this kind of the story, the gist of the story. And this is found in Luke chapter 12. And he began reasoning to himself. This is the guy who's landed. All of a sudden, I don't know if they had a really good rainy year or two, whatever the case might be. That's probably what it was. Had a really, really good crop. And he said, well, what shall I do since I have no place to store all my crops? He was, wanting to keep all that for himself. Then he said, this is what I will do. I will tear down my barns and build larger ones, and there I'll store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, soul, you have many goods laid up for years to come. Take it easy. Eat, drink, and be merry. Right? Well, but God said to him, you're not being too bright here. Right? You're not thinking things through very good. This very night, your soul, and there's a whole other, because soul is mind, will, and emotions. We like to think that God is taking them out of the world. I don't think that's what he's talking about here. I think it's different than that. And he said, but the point I want to make here is that, and now, who will own what you have prepared? Right? So you can amass all that stuff, you know. You can get lots and lots of stuff and lots of. I talked to a guy this week he started the subject. I don't know how the subject got started about making lots of money. He said, I know. He said he had a good friend of his that decided in high school that he was going to become a millionaire before he died. By the time he was 30 years old, he was a millionaire. And he had talked to him, and he said, well, tell me about this. Tell me a story. He said, well, by the time I was 20 years old, he said, I was making $200,000 a year. By the time I was 25 years old, I was making $500,000 a year. And he said, you know what? Now that I'm making $1 million at 30 years old, he said, it's still not enough. It's never enough. Why? He said, why didn't you stop at 200,000? He said, it wasn't enough. No matter how much I make, it's never enough, right? Well, here it is. Jesus said, well, okay. God says, when you're gone, then who's it going to belong to? Is it going to do you any good? No. No, you're dead. No. So, in other words, even though we might accumulate a vast amount of wealth for ourselves here, all of our physical stuff stays here. It doesn't suddenly vanish when you do. It becomes somebody else's problem. That's about what it boils down to. Okay, so first thing is what? You can't take it with you. Second thing is that we know does not happen when we die, is that our physical bodies don't simply disappear. Right? As a matter of fact, every intricate detail of our bodies stays here on this earth. Heart, lungs, brain, hemp tattoos, that newly pierced belly button, it all stays here. You can't take it with you. I've always thought it was kind of funny how religious community and religious people a lot of times like to make a big stink over tattoos, especially a few years ago, tattoos. I don't know, maybe it was when they started to get popular, maybe when religious people started to take notice or whatever, and, you can't do that, all those different kind of things. How long does a tattoo last? Well, till you die. It's not like when you get to heaven, God's going to check you for tattoos. Okay, strip down, dude. No, never mind. Put your clothes back on. Before he left you in the... No, it's not going to happen. No, so what? So what? It's on a physical body, and the physical body's going to stay here, and it's going to get put in a hole, and then it's going to be gone. It's going to turn back to dust again, Wow. So, I don't know why we get so upset over things like that, but sometimes we do. It's a religious thing, I guess. So, since it's true that all the physical stuff that we have stays here, monetary, physical thing, whatever, all physical body, including our physical bodies, then what about the non-physical part of us? That's probably really where we're coming to, right? I mean, that's the only thing we can really talk about at this point when we talk about, is there life after death, or you just simply cease to exist? What about like the knowledge and the skills that we have developed while we were here on this earth? I can tell you that Pappy, Dwayne, wherever he's at, probably in the bar none, I don't know where he's at. Anyway, he is a walking encyclopedia when it comes to locomotives. He is. He still has people calling him. He's been retired now for some years. He still has people calling him saying, hey, got a problem with locomotive. It's doing this and it's doing that. And he says, and they say, we have worked on it for 2 weeks. We cannot figure out what the problem is. And he said, what's it doing? And they tell him this, that, the other thing. He says, I can tell you what it is. He tells them, they go fix it. He's a walking encyclopedia. Okay. And probably a lot of you are walking encyclopedias as far as whatever it is that your gifts, talents, abilities are while you're here on this earth, which, and which I think actually become a part of us. Our gifts, our talents, our abilities, all those interests that we have are given to us by God at the very moment we are conceived. That's who you are. That's the way God has made you, right? And quite honestly, I don't have an answer on that particular subject as far as the non-physical part of us, how much of that we take with us, and like knowledge and skills and those kind of things. But except to say that since that's what God has given us at conception, and since all of that is a definitive and integral part of who we are, who I am, and who you are as an individual, then I think it's fair to say that at least that those things will remain in some form or another, like the gifts, talents, and abilities we have after we die, that we retain that part of us that is us. On the other hand, I think, and then I don't have solid facts, but I think that the human knowledge that we have gained while here on this earth, as far as I can find in the Bible, becomes obsolete. The human knowledge, no matter how knowledgeable we might be, how smart we might be, how intelligent we might be, basically becomes obsolete after we die. Take a look at what Paul says in 1 Corinthians chapter 13 and verse 12. He says, "For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then," okay, and he's talking about after you die, "face to face. Now I know in part while I'm here on this earth, but then I will know fully, just as I also have been fully known." So knowledge in that sense that we have, it becomes an obsolete thing, because once we die, once we pass over, then there's no more use for that. We will know as we are known by God. How many have been seeing the commercials about hunting Einstein's brain? Anybody been seeing the commercials on that? Yeah, they're looking for Einstein's brain. Supposedly, when he died, the guy that did the autopsy took his brain out, took it home with him, put it in a cooler, and kept it for, I don't know, it's been around. Supposedly, they're hunting for it so they can find out what makes his brain different than your brain or my brain or whatever the case might be. But all of the discoveries, any discoveries they might be able to make when they find it, I think it's probably going to be when, will really have absolutely nothing to do with tapping into a knowledge source. Because that was the first thing. Of course, I'm kind of simple, so that was the first thing crossed my mind when they said they were looking for Einstein's brain. Well, wait a minute, you can't. It's not like hooking up to a computer. You hook up a USB port and download whatever's in there, right? Once the brain goes dead, that's it. It's gone. You can't tap into it. There's nothing else you can do. Now, what they're going to be looking for, of course, is the brain, the way the brain is made. And I learned just this morning, I didn't know that. Sheldon was telling me that with a study of the actual brain, the physical brain itself, that people that are more brilliant or smarter have more folds in the brain because there's more surface area for all those connections to be made. Those folks within our world today who are more simple, who have disabilities, their brains are smoother. It's just the way that is. Oh, I'm sure, but that's already a known thing. And I'm not going to find out anything they didn't probably already know. So why can't you download all that stuff? Well, because without life, whatever was in the physical brain when you died will be taken into eternity. And it becomes basically obsolete. No matter how smart you are while you're on this earth. Okay, so the point is, you go, okay, I got it. What now? What difference does that make, right? Well, the point is that whatever it is that we retain of ourselves after death won't include any part of our physical stuff that we have accumulated. And that's exactly why Jesus says, "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, where thieves break in and steal, or after you die somebody else gets it." But store up for yourselves treasure in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. We've all read those verses probably at some point in time before. But in other words, what Jesus is saying to us here is that whatever it is that we can take with us after we die has to be something of a non-physical nature. So what is the non-physical part of ourselves that lives forever, that is eternal? What part of us is it that is non-physical and that is eternal? Well, I want to tell you that it's our human spirit. It's our human spirit. It's a little pet peeve of mine, I think, in some ways, because a lot of times most of the time our world today likes to use soul and spirit as being the same thing. There's a difference, and I can give you the basic differences, and yet they are so intertwined and so integral, but that I'm not sure that you can actually split it apart. Matter of fact, God says another place in His Bible, in the Word, Jesus says that He is able to discern between soul and spirit. There is a difference between soul. Soul basically being mind, will, and emotions. Spirit being that part of us that's created in God's image. Those two things are actually connected in some way, shape, or form. I don't think they can be disconnected, really. Your mind, will, and your emotions is basically who you are. Well, the human spirit that God has given you is part of you as well. So that's the part of us that really lives on and goes on forever. So what do we know about the human spirit then? Well, we know that it was not only created by God, and at the very moment, and I'm going to tell you this directly, that your human spirit was created by God at the very moment you were conceived, and was and is created in His image. Your spirit, your human spirit, as well as your soul, who you are as an individual, who you are specifically as an individual, and which also is our sense of personal consciousness. In other words, our human spirit is that part of us that each of us knows as me. That's the real you, is it not? This isn't the real you. It's a good thing. That's the part of the problem, especially with growing up years, right? I'm sure you all remember growing up years and how difficult it was because maybe you weren't as handsome or as pretty as the next person or as smart as the next person. And so you began to feel like you were less of a person. No. We know that as adults that's not true. But, we all look at on the outside. We don't look on the inside. Especially as young people, we look on the outside, not on the inside. It's a good thing God looks on the inside instead of the outside. It's a good thing. Okay, so even though we're just out of time for today, let me just kind of wrap this up for you right quick, because hopefully you're asking yourselves the right questions, like, if our human spirit and our soul is the only thing that survives after death, and all the knowledge that we have attained while we're here on this earth, is basically obsolete after we die, then what purpose is there to gain more knowledge or to get smarter or to have a greater education or to improve on your condition or any of those kind of things, to develop your gifts or your talents or your interests or your abilities? Why? What for? Well, I can tell you that our secular world will tell you that the reason for that is that it's all this about getting a better education and improving yourself and all those different kind of things is for the sole purpose of being successful in life. That's what life is about. Making your mark in the world. And that success in life is what life is about. Just be successful. That's what life's about. It's all about you, right? It's all about me. However, the question is, if all the knowledge that we might gain while on this earth will be of no intrinsic value after you die, then simply being successful in life is relatively short, then from a biblical perspective, why? Good question, right? Why? If it's only good for here, if all the knowledge that we gain is only for here, and it's not just about me, it's about others as well, it's about, living a life, then why? Why shouldn't I just be a couch potato the rest of my life and leave it at that? And some people do. A lot of people do, as a matter of fact, unfortunately, because our government pays them to do it. I don't know, can't figure that out either. But Paul gives us the answer. He does. In 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 2, he says, if I have the gift of prophecy and know all mysteries and all knowledge, that means you are the smartest person on the face of this earth. Nobody else is smarter than you. I'm not even smarter than a fifth grader. And if I have all faith, even so much as to move mountains, if I don't have love, I'm nothing. Okay, that's the point. Really? Right? Is that, you can gain all the knowledge you want to. You can have all the money in the world that you want to. You can be the smartest and the richest, which probably would mean that you're the richest man on the face of the earth, possibly. Like some of these savants that you hear about that are just, man, they're just unbelievable in a particular area. They don't know how to change oil in the car, but they can give you the square root of 447 bazillion, whatever it is, Wow. But Paul says, you could be a savant in every area of life. Total genius. Total genius. But you know what? If it's not being used for the right purpose, then it's all for nothing. It's literally all for nothing. Because once you pass on, it's just gone. So in other words, let me put it in a little more direct, more common terms. Unless we use the gifts, the talents, the abilities, the interests that God has created us with to bless the lives of others, unless we allow Jesus to live through us and to use those gifts, talents, abilities, interests that we have to shine through us in such a way that when others see our lives and they say that they are convinced that Jesus is who he says he is. Unless that happens, then our life will have been for nothing. That's what he's saying here. So unless you allow Jesus to work through you and live through you to cause others to see what you do and to say, wow, God's awesome, instead of, oh, you're awesome. There are lots of people in the world like that today. All the movie stars, all the richest people on the earth, everybody looks at them and saying, wow, boy, you're really something. I'd like to be like you. But that's the end of it. That's the end of it. Matter of fact, a vast majority of the very richest people who have lived either died penniless or committed suicide, one or the other. Because they're saying, it's all for nothing. Well, how do you change that? Well, you change that by allowing Jesus to live his life through you, to use the gifts and the talents and the abilities and the interests that he's given you to convince others that Jesus is who he says he is. And that's exactly why Jesus says in Matthew 5:16, he says, let your light shine. Whose light? Not his light? Actually, no, because it's the light he has given you. It's those gifts, the talents, and abilities and interests he's given you that make you you. And he says, let your light shine in such a way that they may see your good works, what you do. They're seeing what you do, and yet it's in such a way that they glorify your Father who is in heaven, not you. That's really backwards from what our world says, is it not? It's so totally foreign to what our world says, it's almost hard to get that concept. That I'm doing it, it's my light, it's who I am as an individual, and yet as I do it, and people see me do it, they give God the glory. Yeah. Why? Because you give God the glory. Because you give God the glory. You're not saying, yeah, I did it. Look at me. I'm good. No. You're saying, you know, God's awesome. You know, that's the only answer I have. God's awesome. I don't know how I can do what I do. I just do. Because that's how God has created you. And when we give God glory, then others also will say, you know what? Wow. I can do that too. Yeah, you can. I don't care who you are. I don't care who you are. I don't care what your inabilities are. What you think your inabilities are. God has given you abilities that nobody else has. Nobody. Nobody. God's awesome. God's awesome. The Lord is a warrior. He has called us and made us to be who we are. And all we need to do is be who we are. Let your light shine. Be who we are so that others will see our lives and say, wow, God's awesome.